On a cold, rainy Seattle morning, the sound of rain hitting the kitchen window seemed to echo the unease in Sarah's chest. At 52, she stared at the pile of bills on the table. Her coffee sat untouched, cold beside an eviction notice that flashed like a beacon of doom in her peripheral vision. A cold, almost paralyzing panic squeezed her chest, stealing her breath. How had she, a woman who had dedicated much of her life to working hard as a university librarian, reached this point of extreme vulnerability? Decades of career dedication, a painful divorce that, though necessary, drained a large part of her savings and left deep scars, not just emotional but financial, and a series of careless financial decisions, or perhaps more precisely, the absence of conscious financial decisions, culminated in this moment of deep despair. Her simple dreams of a quiet retirement, of perhaps finally having time to travel a bit or dedicate herself to her beloved books, were cruelly dissolving before her eyes, replaced by a grim reality. The relentless truth of midlife bankruptcy was a ghost at her door, ready to take the little dignity, stability, and hope for a better future she had left. That morning wasn't just another day. It was her moment of truth when denial was no longer an option, and the harsh, cold, inescapable reality demanded an immediate, desperate response before it was too late for her financial life to completely collapse. The despair etched on Sarah's face was, unfortunately, not an isolated exception in the vast and complex American financial landscape. Hundreds of miles away in Dallas, Mark, a 58-year-old former aerospace engineer, watched his family, business a small but once thriving vintage electronics store, slowly crumble under the overwhelming weight of escalating debts and a sudden devastating health crisis that had drained his life savings. The root of the problem is often deeper, structural, and systemic. Compelling data from the American Bankruptcy Institute and research from renowned institutions like Harvard University consistently show that the overwhelming majority of bankruptcy filings are intrinsically linked to catastrophic and, often, unavoidable events. Often, this debt isn't the result of luxuries or extravagances, but rather a desperate attempt to cover gaps in the household budget, pay essential bills, or manage emergencies that a reserve fund cannot support. This snowball of compounded interest quickly becomes uncontrollable, turning small debts into insurmountable mountains of minimum payments that barely cover the interest. The absence of a robust emergency fund is a widespread failure. The Federal Reserve points out that a significant portion of Americans don't even have $400 to cover an unexpected expense, leaving millions of families vulnerable to any financial shock, no matter how small. The increasing complexity of the financial system, coupled with the chronic lack of formal financial education in adulthood and, unfortunately, in school curricula, decisively contributes to mistaken decisions. This includes high-risk investments without proper knowledge, the inability to plan for an adequate retirement, or failure to understand credit contracts. This lack of a foundation leads many to live day by day, in the present, without the long-term vision that financial stability requires to avoid pitfalls. In 2023, for example, approximately 66.5% of personal bankruptcies were driven by medical issues, a shocking statistic that even includes those with good health insurance. Serious accidents, the diagnosis of chronic or terminal illnesses, and prolonged, expensive hospital stays can rapidly deplete any financial reserves, leading entire families to financial ruin, even with years of careful planning. A sudden autoimmune disease required expensive and prolonged treatments, consuming his savings and debilitating his ability to work. Concurrently, the dramatic slowdown of his electronics business, which relied on outdated technologies and marketing approaches in a constantly and rapidly evolving market, led to an abrupt drop in revenue. He had neglected to modernize his business, clinging to old methods and naively, He didn't have life or disability insurance that adequately covered his needs in case of serious illness or incapacitation. His mindset, focused solely on the present and daily operations, prevented him from foreseeing future risks and proactively preparing for them. He desperately tried to revive the business with more debt, taking out bank loans and credit card advances, a strategy that, while common, is disastrous when the root of the problem isn't addressed. The debt grew exponentially, and the interest became unbearable, a burden he could no longer carry. Mark's story highlights the crucial importance of understanding that bankruptcy isn't just the result of irresponsible decisions, but often a series of unfortunate events, a lack of preventive planning, and the absence of basic financial literacy that allows one to navigate life's challenges. The lesson is clear and urgent. Prevention, adaptability, and financial knowledge are the most powerful tools against financial collapse in midlife. Vulnerability doesn't choose age or social status, and the ability to prepare and adapt for the unexpected is what truly defines financial resilience. Furthermore, job loss in later life is a devastating and underestimated factor. A study by the National Bureau of Economic Research revealed that while the unemployment rate for individuals over 55 might be relatively lower compared to younger groups, the average time to find a new job is drastically longer, often leading to extended periods without income. This results in prolonged and devastating income loss, eroding savings, mortgages, and carefully constructed retirement plans. His face, once marked by a pragmatic confidence forged by years of engineering and management, now bore the deep exhaustion of someone fighting a losing battle, the fatigue visible in every line. Midlife bankruptcy, he painfully realized, was often a complex labyrinth of interconnected problems, a web of circumstances that caught individuals and families by surprise, turning hard-won stability into quicksand. Retirements that seemed secure and distant evaporated in the face of unexpected costs. Two children returned with their own financial difficulties, needing support, and the astronomical costs of medical treatments, even with insurance, became an unbearable burden that crushed any hope of recovery. Life, with its unpredictable and often cruel twists, could, in the blink of an eye, turn any hard-working and respectable citizen into a cold statistic of debt and despair, often without warning. Financial planning and economic experts, based on extensive research, point out that the main causes of personal bankruptcy in the United States are far from being mere impulsive spending or individual irresponsibility, although these factors can worsen the situation. Another significant and pernicious contributor to midlife financial crisis is credit card debt and personal loans accumulated over the years. In Mark's case, the financial tragedy was a nefarious conjunction of factors. The foreclosure notice, an email with the terse subject, urgent notice, final chance for settlement, arrived on a gray, rainy Tuesday in the middle of a monotonous afternoon. Thomas, a respected 61-year-old history professor who had dedicated decades to education at an Ohio State university, felt the ground vanish beneath his feet. His heart pounded, and a cold sweat ran down his neck. The first and most crucial step, which Thomas embraced with a mix of fear and stoic determination, is a complete and honest assessment of debt. He spent hours at his kitchen table, his mind clouded by anxiety, listing every creditor, the exact amount owed to each Thomas and his wife. With a renewed team spirit forged by adversity, scrutinized every item in their budget with an unforgiving magnifying glass. They canceled all unnecessary streaming subscriptions, drastically cut down on dining out, which used to be a weekly luxury, and sought creative and economical ways to save on utilities. The path to recovery is lengthy, full of pitfalls, temptations, and moments of discouragement. Thomas and his wife learned to celebrate small victories, like paying off a credit card debt completely or settling a smaller loan, using each small achievement as fuel to keep going. They also sought support from financial education groups and, at times, considered therapy to cope with the overwhelming stress, anxiety, and guilt that their financial situation imposed. Financial control, they discovered, isn't just about numbers and complex spreadsheets, but about redefining habits, mindsets, and fundamentally, one's relationship with money. It's a journey of self-discovery, reevaluation of priorities, and reconstruction of self-esteem. Thomas's story, painful yet inspiring, teaches us that recovery is indeed possible, even in the most adverse circumstances. But it requires an unwavering combination of applied financial knowledge, proactive and consistent action, personal sacrifice, and, above all, a resilient mindset and an unshakable faith in one's ability to overcome. It's living proof that even when a situation seems untenable, there's always a way to start over and rebuild life, brick by brick, such as reducing air conditioning use and fixing small leaks at home that inflated their water bill. This period of austerity, though challenging and often disheartening, was essential to free up significant funds for debt payments. Furthermore, seeking additional sources of income became imperative, as their regular salaries were no longer sufficient to cover their needs and debts. Thomas's wife, with her extensive experience with children, started taking part-time babysitting gigs for neighbors, and he, with his history skills and passion, began tutoring high school students online and proofreading academic papers for university students who needed an experienced eye. These small but consistent additional incomes combined made a significant difference in their monthly cash flow. Selling unnecessary assets can also quickly generate capital. Thomas sold an old collection of rare books he had inherited that were no longer essential for his livelihood, and his wife sold some jewelry she hadn't worn in years, using the money to further reduce their debt principal. Debt renegotiation, as in the case of their mortgage, is a powerful and underutilized tool. Banks and creditors are often more willing to negotiate terms, amounts, and even interest rates, especially if the debtor demonstrates proactivity and a clear plan to regularize the situation. A study by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York showed that debt renegotiation, though often seen as a last resort or a sign of weakness, can prevent a significant number of foreclosures and bankruptcies, benefiting both the debtor and the creditor by avoiding costly legal processes. The annual interest rate of each loan or card, and the minimum payment required for each. This clarity, however painful it was in exposing the true extent of the problem and the depth of the hole he was in, was the indispensable starting point for a solution. Next, Thomas sought professional credit counseling. He found help from nonprofit organizations, such as the National Foundation for Credit Counseling in the U.S., which offer free or low-cost sessions with certified financial counselors. These experienced professionals helped him create a realistic budget and, crucially, to negotiate with creditors. Many discover, at this stage, that it's possible to consolidate debts, which can reduce interest rates and simplify monthly payments through a debt management plan. A popular and motivating strategy is the debt snowball method, where you pay off the smallest debt first, gaining momentum and motivation with each debt eliminated. Alternatively, the debt avalanche prioritizes paying off debts with the highest interest rates, which, mathematically, saves more money in the long run. Thomas, after consulting a counselor, opted for a smart combination. He aggressively focused on high-interest credit card debts and, simultaneously, managed to negotiate a revised payment plan with the mortgage bank, avoiding imminent foreclosure. His wife, Sarah, had unexpectedly lost her job as a substitute teacher due to drastic budget cuts in the school district and the exorbitant, unplanned costs of emergency surgery for his elderly mother, which required prolonged treatment, forced them to drain their small retirement fund and take out personal loans with interest rates so high they felt like daylight robbery. The shame of their financial situation, the sense of failure, was overwhelming, a heavy burden on his shoulders, But the pressing need to act and react was even greater, more urgent. He knew he needed a plan, and fast, to save his family and his home from total ruin and public humiliation. Thomas's story, that of an ordinary man thrust into an unimaginable financial crisis, is a vivid example of how, even at the lowest point of despair and uncertainty, human resilience and a methodical application of concrete financial strategies can, in fact, illuminate a path out of the tunnel and pave the way back to stability and dignity. Financial recovery after a deep crisis, whether caused by excessive debt, unexpected unemployment, devastating medical emergencies, or a combination of factors, requires not only iron discipline but a clear and practical roadmap, a guide to navigating the labyrinth. Another fundamental strategy, and perhaps the most painful for one's lifestyle, is radical spending cuts. Emotional discipline is as crucial as financial discipline in this long and arduous process. In a vibrant and effervescent San Francisco neighborhood, where gleaming skyscrapers mingled with colorful Victorian houses, Linda, a talented 48-year-old graphic designer, felt the weight of regret gnaw at her soul day after day. She bitterly lamented the past financial choices that led her to accumulate a gigantic student loan debt, a heavy inheritance from her degree at a renowned university, and an unsustainable lifestyle she struggled to maintain, living under the constant pressure of bills and payments. One of the most widespread and dangerous mistakes is the absence of a budget or, at least, basic financial planning. Many people spend their money without control, with no idea where their hard-earned income is actually going, living paycheck to paycheck, or, as they say, putting out fires financially. High interest rates, often exceeding 20% or even 30% annually, can quickly turn small purchases and impulses into insurmountable mountains of debt. Financial education teaches how to use credit wisely, prioritizing paying off the entire balance monthly to avoid interest accumulation and the minimum payment trap, which merely perpetuates the debt cycle, causing the principal debt to barely be touched. Linda learned this lesson the hard and painful way. She cut up all her credit cards except one, which she now uses with discipline and pays in full every month, reserving it only for genuine emergencies or planned purchases. Ignoring retirement savings is another catastrophic mistake that haunts midlife and, at times, prevents a dignified life in old age. Many start thinking about retirement too late, missing out on the incredible and powerful effect of compound interest over time. A study by the Employee Benefit Research Institute revealed that a significant portion of American workers have little to no retirement savings, relying solely on Social Security, which often provides an insufficient amount to maintain their standard of living. The ideal is to start saving as early as possible, taking advantage of employer-sponsored retirement programs like 401s and 403s, and seeking guidance on investments suitable for one's risk profile and time horizon. A simple budget, meticulously recording all income and every single expense, is the first and most fundamental step toward financial control and regaining sanity regarding finances. Linda, upon realizing the severity of her situation and how lost she was, began to use a budgeting app that helped her initially reluctantly. This includes both investing in complex financial products without understanding their inherent risks, leading to money loss, and, at the opposite extreme, leaving money idle in low-yield savings accounts, silently eroded by inflation and losing purchasing power. Financial education doesn't require becoming a market expert or an investment guru, but rather understanding the basic principles of diversification, risk versus return, and the importance of a long-term plan, adapting the strategy to your goals and time frame. Linda, inspired by her new awareness and desire for change, began reading introductory books on simple investments and consistently listening to personal finance podcasts learning about index funds and ETFs, which provide diversification at a low cost. Neglecting planning for major future events, such as children's education, purchasing a home, or even caring for elderly parents, can also seriously compromise finances and generate unexpected crises. Planning ahead and setting clear, specific, and achievable financial goals is crucial to avoid unpleasant surprises and ensure that these large expenses are absorbed without destabilizing the budget. Linda's story highlights that financial education isn't just about numbers, charts, and complex strategies, but fundamentally about changing one's mindset, creating healthy spending and saving habits, and empowering oneself to build a secure and prosperous financial future, avoiding the common traps that lead to bankruptcy. It's never too late to start learning, getting informed, and transforming your financial reality. Visualize her daily expenses and identify areas of waste, such as the numerous streaming subscriptions she barely used or the frequent expensive coffee shop visits. Another blatant and extremely common mistake is the lack of an emergency fund. The majority of American families don't even have $400 to cover an unexpected emergency, according to alarming data from the Federal Reserve. This means that any unforeseen event, a broken down car, a failing appliance, an unexpected plumbing bill, or, most critically, an emergency medical bill can trigger a catastrophic financial crisis. The unanimous recommendation from financial experts is to have 3 to 6 months of basic living expenses saved in an easily accessible account, a vital safety net that absorbs life's unexpected blows without resorting to expensive loans. She vividly remembered the 90s, her youth and early adulthood, when the idea of financial education seemed distant and irrelevant, a dry subject for suited economists on Wall Street or for the super-rich living in castles. No one in her family had ever openly discussed the importance of budgeting, saving, investing, or debt management. Money was a taboo topic, a cause for arguments, or at best something to be spent when you had it and bitterly regretted when it ran out. Without this fundamental guidance, this essential compass, she found herself almost by inertia repeating the same dysfunctional financial errors and patterns of her parents and grandparents, spending thoughtlessly more than she earned, relying on credit cards as an unlimited and cost-free extension of her income, and dangerously completely ignoring her financial future, naively believing that things would sort themselves out or that a miracle would happen. Linda's silent anguish is a disturbing reflection of millions of Americans who, unprepared and without the basic knowledge of how to manage their money, fall into the most common and devastating financial traps, compromising both their present and their future. Financial education, or the tragic lack thereof, is highlighted by experts as the most powerful yet underutilized tool to prevent midlife bankruptcy, empowering individuals to make informed and proactive decisions throughout their lives. Consumer debt, especially that originating from credit cards, is a persistent, silent, and insidious trap that ensnares millions in a vicious cycle of endless payments. The lack of investment knowledge also leads to expensive mistakes and missed financial opportunities. In the suffocating and persistent heat of Phoenix, Arizona, where the relentless sun beat down on the asphalt, Michael, a 55-year-old former sales manager, felt a constant tightness in his chest that had nothing to do with the weather. After being suddenly retired from his long and dedicated career due to an unexpected company restructuring, his pension, he soon discovered with a painful shock, was desperately insufficient to cover basic household expenses and maintain the standard of living he was accustomed to. The boredom of forced inactivity, coupled with the growing financial anxiety that suffocated him every night, was consuming him from within. Michael, who had always been a classic car enthusiast and amateur mechanic with a passion for engines and restorations, discovered the vast and growing world of the gig economy, a universe of flexible, on-demand work. With renewed passion and necessity as his motivator, he began offering consulting services and minor specialized repairs for classic car restorations to local collectors who valued his expertise and attention to detail. Michael, who was initially skeptical and had little to no investment experience, diligently began to research and understood that he didn't need to be a Wall Street expert or a financial mogul to invest effectively and prudently. He learned about the exponential power of compound interest, where money earns returns on previously earned returns. This means adjusting the asset allocation according to his age, financial goals, and risk tolerance. As we age and approach retirement, for example, the general tendency is to reduce risk, moving more investments into safer, less volatile assets. Over time, he realized that patience, consistency, and discipline in investments were more important than trying to predict unpredictable market movements or chasing quick, miraculous gains that often lead to losses. The extra income he generated from his automotive consulting and parts sales was partially reinvested, creating a virtuous cycle of financial growth and a sense of control over his own destiny. Michael not only supplemented his income, alleviating immediate pressure, but he built a new sense of purpose, a profitable hobby, and a financial security he thought he had lost forever. His story demonstrates that midlife is not an end to one's professional or financial life, but on the contrary, a valuable opportunity to explore new avenues of income, professionally reinvent oneself, and build lasting wealth through well-informed and strategic investment decisions. The smart combination of extra work and prudent investments can transform a tight financial situation into a prosperous, fulfilling, and above all, secure future, and the vital importance of diversification for his portfolio. For beginners or for those seeking security and simplicity, investing in index funds or mutual funds that track the performance of a broad market such as the S&P 500 is a low-cost strategy with good long-term returns that requires little active management being managed by professionals. These options drastically reduce the risk of concentrating money in a single stock or sector and are accessible to all budgets. Another option is buying treasury bonds or certificates of deposit, which offer more modest returns but are considered low risk and ideal for a portion of an emergency fund, or for those seeking more security and predictability in their returns. For those with a slightly higher risk profile and who already have a solid emergency fund, investing in stocks of solid companies with a proven track record of paying dividends can be a way to generate recurring passive income, complementing active income. With time and word of mouth, he expanded his reach, using online platforms and social media to identify and sell rare parts he found in junkyards, auctions, and car shows, turning a hobby into a surprising and rewarding source of income. The options for extra income are vast and accessible for those with initiative and creativity. From freelancing in areas such as writing, editing, graphic design, programming, consulting in one's former sales field, or even mentoring. There's also the possibility of renting out underutilized assets, like a spare room in the house via platforms such as Airbnb or 1SCar on services like Turo, generating passive income. Many in midlife possess a wealth of accumulated skills and experiences from decades of work and life that can be monetized, giving private lessons in one's area of expertise, offering gardening or landscaping services, pet sitting or house sitting, or even starting a small online business selling crafts, digital products, ebooks, or courses. Data from Upwork, one of the largest freelance work platforms, shows a consistent and significant increase in the number of freelancers over 50, highlighting the vast potential of this market for those looking to supplement their income and stay active. Michael had always led an active life with a steady income stream, which gave him a sense of control. But now, without his robust former salary, it seemed his options had run out and a dark, uncertain future stretched before him. Michael's story is unfortunately common among millions of Americans who, in midlife, suddenly find themselves without the desired income and desperately need to reinvent themselves and find new sources of livelihood. The pursuit of extra income and an understanding of smart investments then become not just a viable option, but an urgent necessity to survive the crisis and thrive once again. Finding sources of additional income is one of the most effective and empowering strategies to boost financial recovery and build a more secure future. Transforming existing skills and passions into new profitable opportunities. Parallel to generating extra income, mastering smart investments is crucial for making money work for you, building wealth passively, and accelerating financial recovery. Michael also discovered the fundamental importance of rebalancing his investment portfolio periodically. In a charming and tranquil coastal town in Florida, where palm trees swayed gently with the ocean breeze and waves broke rhythmically on the beach, Emily, 59, gazed at the blue horizon with a sense of peace, yet also purpose. She was preparing for retirement, a significant milestone that, for many of her generation, was accompanied by an overwhelming mix of anxiety, uncertainty, and, at times, fear. Emily had witnessed, with sadness and concern, the financial collapse of close friends and family members in midlife, people who, like her, had worked their entire lives but were caught off guard by crises. Determined not to make the same painful mistakes, she had dedicated herself to a journey of financial learning and transformation. A trajectory from a young adult who lived paycheck to paycheck without grand financial ambitions or planning to a financially independent and secure woman was built on conscious choices, continuous learning, and an iron discipline regarding her finances. Emily knew, however, that achieving financial security was only half the battle, the initial part. The other half, equally crucial and challenging, was staying secure in the long term. In a world of economic uncertainties, persistent inflation, and the unexpected challenges that life inevitably presents, the pursuit of financial sustainability is not a final destination to be reached and forgotten, but an ongoing commitment and a journey of constant adaptation.